Hello friends, it's Kaji and I have another motorcycle blog for you. I wanted to talk about living in Cyprus for almost 2 years now and make some conclusions. Maybe I can tell you something you didn't know. We're heading on a scouting trip now. It's morning, 8 o'clock. It's been a while since we've done this. Let's discuss the pros and cons of living in Cyprus for a motorcyclist. Let's start with the pros. They're pretty obvious, but I'll go over them. The first advantage is that the riding season is year-round here. Sometimes it gets interrupted in August due to the heat. But this only impacts day trips like spending a whole Saturday out riding. Everything else, like commuting to work or the gym, continues. I've ridden in 42 or 43 degree heat and it was fine, so you certainly can. Thus, the season here is effectively year-round. It actually rains more in Nicosia than on the coast. I'll talk about Nicosia later, if you're curious why I live right here, not in Limassol. That's why I moved from Larnaca to here. So from mid-spring to mid-autumn, there's hardly any rain here. The weather here in the winter has been quite warm over the past 2 years, but here in winter it usually gets over 10 degrees during the day. Yes, there are super rare days. This year there weren't any. Neither were there any last year. But I heard that it can drop down to 5 or 7 degrees, but that's super rare, some kind of unique event. So you can ride here all year round. That's a plus. The second advantage is that the equipment here is relatively cheap, especially if you're buying new ones. Of course, the relative cheapness of the equipment implies a slightly different tax system, import duties, and so on. So accordingly, this TNR costs $10,900 here. In Russia, a used TNR is more expensive right now. Here's another thing I can share with you about the perks for motorcyclists. The landscape here is quite varied. You can enjoy good asphalt and winding roads, get some thrills riding a cruiser along the embankments, or go off-roading, like I and many others do. I would call it a relatively significant, but substantial variety of motorcycle recreational activities available to you. In other words, there are off-road tracks here, all sorts of off-road tours on different vehicles. There is a racing track, though. Cheap €60 for one whole track day, not just one session. If you buy a season pass, it's around €450 for the entire year. So it's fairly inexpensive in my opinion. Now I'm trying to recall what else. Plus, sure, it can't be compared to Russia. But here we have one of the cheapest gasoline prices in Europe. The price has increased slightly recently. Now it's about 1.40 or 1.30. And before, I remember filling up for 1.19. And of course, it's twice as expensive as in Russia, but relatively cheaper when compared to the rest of Europe. I'm sorry, I just remembered. Another advantage compared to other countries is you can trade in your Russian license without having to retake any tests or the like, and you'll get a Cypriot one with the same categories. It's a really nice perk because in Germany, it would cost a pretty penny to do the same roundabout. the exchange and got his license. I now have mine valid up to 2068. As you see, very Cypriot and optimistic about my lifespan. Okay, let's return to the downsides. One negative aspect is the lack of motorcycle selection here, whether it's new ones like Olya's, dealerships all over. If you're looking at secondhand motorcycles, the local fleet is relatively small. Not just the small fleet here, buying a motorcycle is significantly easier than selling one afterwards. So keep that in your mind. The second negative is the poor service network for motorcycles. If you're dealing with a bike owner or mechanic, they might be able to handle this for you, perhaps even on time. But in most cases, it's usually easier to do things yourself on your own bike than to give it to a service. It looks like there's a significant difference as there are good services out there. My Tenere is serviced by a good one. When you compare it with mainland Europe, especially if you order something large and voluminous, the delivery might take a while. It's like a wind has risen. If you're lucky to get a spacious cargo on the plane for your bulky item, it will take a considerable amount of time. But if you're ordering something small, it gets shipped rather quickly. For example, I ordered a helmet, a turtle, boots, plus braces, all in one parcel. It took me almost a month to get it, even though it reached the border in about 2 days. From the moment it arrived in Cyprus, it reached me in 1 day. But here, for almost 3 weeks, either I, or rather the parcel, stood and waited for a seat on the plane to come to me. That's probably one of the downsides. In fact, everything is there, but everything is so mediocre. If you measure it even by Moscow standards, it's probably even below average. And in fact, this is a real paradigm, or not even a paradigm, but let's say that it's the motto of Cyprus. In the next video, I will talk about the pros and cons of life in Cyprus in general. Not necessarily related to motorcycles, you'll see. You'll realize that Cyprus is truly a place that pretty much has it all. However, it might certainly not be the place that fits your, let's say, habits. But it is what it is. Yes, what other downsides do we have? I'm trying to remember some downsides now. I'm annoyed by delivery. It's not particularly developed. People don't really enjoy riding motorcycles, but it's challenging to find a good coach, for example, for enduro. I'm not sure, maybe things are better on the track here. But I'm also skeptical. If you dig deeper, it might be disappointing, yet the track is somewhat developed. As I've mentioned, there's the Okna Speedway. It's not very large, but for a motorcycle, it's quite difficult. Again, it's hard to find a coach for enduro. If you found one, there are often cancellations and other issues. Often it's quite disorganized. It's slightly confusing when you're used to a different lifestyle. Let's just say, I'm trying to recall other downsides. Well, no, I don't think there are any more downsides. It's hot. Yes, it's probably hot in August. Sometimes you'd like something cooler because you do take breaks in such long rides for the entire day just because it's warm in the winter because of the snow in Russia. It lasts a month, which is okay there. In Russia, it's not a month, it's more. If you take the Moscow area, or if you take the southern zone, you can also ski there for quite a long time. In Sochi, for instance, I'd ski all year if you don't mind being soaked like a dog. Yes, you can also ride there almost all year. So, we're supposed to drive to an off-road spot from where we'll need to drive something to see where this trail is. I'm not going to ride this trail today because I'm in regular clothes. I just came out to scout and record a video for you. Now let's see what's here. Yes, I can already see that there's a gate here. They're chained up. I see that, but I think there's quite a possibility that we can bypass it. Now we're going to ride a circle on it once. Well, a small one that isn't very difficult. Here is a cool descent, so quite sharp. Climbs instead of doing a drift. Here too. A climb, another climb, a place for a jump. I'm without protection, so I won't push it. So as not to crash to pieces, here under the drift we pass the contour dodger. By the way, I don't pass them well. The second one here is probably smaller, so you need to sit up at the exit. There is a jump. A thrill in general, such a cool track. Very interesting, okay? And we go to our sheep. We need to go home because I've learned everything. I'll put on my gear and come here one of these days to train. That's kind of how it works, really. There's no one like that. Oh, the idiot has left. Kagi was with you. Bye-bye. Take care.